show interview, you someone who started a business, a product, a brand, took on Gillette over the last 25 years and has done unbelievably well. So anyone who's joining me for the first time, I just really wanted to reiterate why I'm doing these sessions of McVeigh Meets, and I just feel like I want to contribute to the current situation with COVID-19 and just trying to raise some money for the NHS and the wonderful job that they're doing. So I have a target of £1,000. Anybody knows me, very target driven person. So I have a target of £1,000 and we're well on the way of hitting that target. So that leads me nicely into today's guest, and it's a man who speaks with, he interviews, he knows some of the most famous players and managers from all around the Premier League, more than most, and that's BT Sports' Des Kelly. Des, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, thanks, Paul. You're one of them, of course, one of those famous players.
Yeah. Well, I think I could be right at the bottom of that list, to be honest. But listen, you're looking really well. You're looking like you're doing plenty of exercise, keeping yourself in shape.
Yeah, it's a struggle. As you get older, it's more of a struggle. I'm trying to avoid returning as a blimp after after the lockdown, but it's a it's a
Yeah.
battle that's could go either way at the moment. This extra month now, I think it's going to be
Yeah.
more of a chore than the last one.
And do you know what? It's interesting because, so because as you just mentioned there, like I've been on your show whenever you were doing your show on BT Sport, and I was talking about the book and the psychology side, which we'll get to later on because I'm really interested in hearing your side and your journey. And it feels like just kind of observing the current situation that people are almost in one or two camps. They're either key workers, right? Flat out really are up against it because of the
Yeah.
situation, or the other side's almost like not doing a lot. You've either been furloughed, you're sitting at home, which is obviously incredibly difficult for people. So, what even just like as a little bit of advice, what do you think is a good way to handle one of those two situations?
I like the phrase key worker, and I would drop into that bracket, but unfortunately, there's no work to be done. I mean, everybody's doing exactly what we're doing now. We're talking to one another via computers and things like this. Um, there's all the obvious advice. I'd love to say I heed it all and I adhere to it, and that we have a routine and you have an exercise plan and you have time to do certain things, but
And
you do
do
realize that just
you?
life ticks through a
Yeah.
little bit, but I'm not psychotic about it because there's kids in the house, they spend time with the family, they want to do something else, or my wife's teaching somebody aged 10 algebra and I have to be the referee, that kind of thing. So there are all sorts of things break up the day.
It was funny having we had Jason McAteer on Saturday, and obviously he's funny guy, and he's like, yeah, and I'm spending loads more time with the kids, and they're actually okay because he's just normally flying all over the world for most of the time. So and it's probably with you, you're
Yeah.
constantly going to games, Premier League stadia all over the country.
Now this has been a terrible shock to my family because I'm always away at Champions League, there's games everywhere. Being at home all the time, it's a test. It's a test. It's a test for them, I think, more than me. Because I'll come home and say, why haven't we done this? And if I feel I've been doing some DIY, which it's you know with questionable results, but at least I'm doing something. I feel like I need to do something. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure they're too happy having me around. They've actually ringed the calendar with June the 8th on it as a sort of release date and a little question mark next to it, and I feel their pain.
Yeah, and so that's probably like a great little segue into, because for someone who's was in the footballing world for 25 years and stepped away from it for quite a long time now, I really just have no idea what's happening in that whole industry. So probably you more than most would know the sort of hopefully a little bit more insight and an inside story. Can you give us any idea of what's happening, when it might be back?
Well, they're all talking about it. It's just it depends on the numbers. It depends on how people adhere to the lockdown. It's a little bit easier today because where I am, it's a cloudier day. So that those all those factors will come into play. They are planning for June. Whether it happens, well, we'll see. But I think there's so many optimistic noises coming out, and a lot of hypocrisy as well. The government have been bashing footballers and telling them they should donate percentages of their fees to the NHS or whatever, and that's all well and good. And then they turn around a few days later and say football must return for the morale of the nation. So there's mixed messages going out everywhere.
Well, why do you think Matt Hancock did that? Because it felt really strange that he just went for one particular demographic in a country that that of industries that makes millions and billions of pounds. Why footballers?
I probably thought he was playing to the crowd. I probably thought it was a nice open goal for him, pardon the pun. A populist move. Footballers do get dragged through a lot of things like this. The spokesmen, ambassadors, and get paid too much. I mean, I'd rather he turned his guns on some of the big businesses in the country, some of the hedge fund managers, stockbrokers, those kind of people who earn vastly more. I think he just thought it was a rabble rouser and a populist politician's soundbite.
Yeah, I was just very, very kind of confused by the whole situation when you think like that. Well, actually, as you say, football is generally and having known so many over the years that go above and beyond in terms of donating to charity, doing charitable
Yeah.
causes, working with charities, promoting them. It almost seems like I didn't really get it at all. But anyway, let's talk less about him. Listen,
No, I
one thing
agree with you.
that
I agree with you
kind of
completely.
still has kind of gone past me here, and I still can't really fully understand it. What's happening at Newcastle? Have you any idea? Like,
I'm
what?
sorry,
Like,
no. I've no scoop for you today, no.
no, not like a scoop. I just like I don't understand. Like, what is so? Can you explain for even someone like me, but anyone who might not be fully up with what's happening in Newcastle? Have they bought them? Have they not bought them? Is there controversy? Is there not controversy? Like, what is the whole furore?
Well, they're in the process of trying to buy them. They look like they're in a very good position. In terms of controversy, well, yes, there will be controversy, but then I think that's becoming a common theme in football, in the big clubs. The phrase "sports washing" is the one we use, isn't it? Where they try to burnish the image of a country or a particular business or individual via the popular support of a football club, and that's where we are. I think is whether you can see. I mean, I've been talking to fans and mates about this, and some of them are happy that there's going to be an injection of cash and it can't be possibly any worse than Mike Ashley. And of course, there's the other side of the coin where we have a regime which is questionable tactics and a number of things, including journalism, and whether we just ignore that, take the money, and move on. But in the world we're in right now, I wouldn't see any massive hurdle for the Saudis moving in on a football club
Yeah.
because there's precedents elsewhere.
Well, and that's what again. That's what I kind of why I don't understand it because it's not like other countries and almost governments are buying football clubs. So whether you look at Dubai or UAE or even China, you just have So it's almost like it's one rule for the Saudis versus the rest of them.
Well, I think it's right that it's brought up. I just don't think it's going to stop the bid going through. Not when you've got a World Cup in Qatar, not when you've got players going in and out of China for extraordinary sums of money there as well. So there is a controversy. I don't think it's going to prevent the deal going through, but I think that's the horse has long bolted from that particular stable.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose whenever when I was so delighted that you said to me last night that you were able to join us and absolutely
Yeah,
really
sorry,
appreciate it.
disappointed. If you're just tuning in and you think it's Harry Redknapp's looking pretty well, or he's looking a bit rough, you'd be right. It's all right. I'm actually happier to do it today because I was doing it on Sunday, so it's nice to bring it forward.
You
It's not
were.
like I've got anything else to do, to be fair.
No, that's true. But I do, no, honestly, really, really appreciate it. And I suppose we should stick to because I'm not a journalist. You're obviously a very, very high level journalist. I've had won so many awards over the years. I shouldn't be interviewing you about these kind of things. What I really want to talk to you about is all about your job, which I think for anyone looking at you from the outside days would probably think, wow, you've got probably one of the best jobs in the world because you're speaking to, you're meeting, you're interviewing, you're mixing with the elite players, best of the best in the Premier League week in, week out. What is that like?
Yeah, I've had some good jobs over the years, Paul, but I agree with you. It is a an entirely different kind of role. If you're in a press box, or if you're running a newspaper, you're running a sports section or whatever, there's a distance. To be smack bang in the middle of a football pitch with a camera and a microphone at the moment the team wins a trophy and does something that will be remembered forever is quite a privilege, to say the least. And it is also quite surreal, and it pays not to think too much about it and just to get on with it. If you sit down there and think, oh my God, there's tens of millions watching this, you'll mess it up, as you do anyway. But it's a fantastic job, I agree.
And what is the kind of what are the almost the benefits, or why do you think it's the best job? Because obviously most people would say getting a free ticket is a great start. Speaking to the likes of Jurgen Klopp, who everyone just seems to love Jurgen Klopp, whether you're a Liverpool fan or not. Maybe Man United fans might not love him, but apart from that, everyone else seems to love him. So, what's it like just having a chat with Jurgen every week?
I did his first interview when he came over because it just fell that way. The Liverpool game was we had the rights to his first game as Liverpool manager, and you could tell from the offset on just from the get go that he was going to be fantastic. He's generous, he's engaging, he has a sense of humour, he's performance driven and eloquent, and he carries that charisma with him as well. So I couldn't ask, well, any journalist talking to him can ask a question, as it could be a terrible question, but he's generous enough to give you possibly a great answer. So people always ask me, is Klopp as he is as around a football match in normal life? And I don't really see him in normal life at home or anything, but I do see him around the place, and he does carry that energy and that enthusiasm, and that's why people are attracted to him.
Yeah, I've never really seen, in all my time in football, anyone that looks like, and again, it's only my perception of what I can see, is the bond that he's created with his players. Because that looks like it's another level. That's like family more than just teammates.
Oh, I think there's been managers through the years who've done that. He can be ruthless when he needs to be as well. But what he does, which previous generations of managers didn't have to do, is constantly perform. We see more of Jurgen Klopp than, I mean, people talk about Shankly and they talk about Busby. They didn't have to appear on camera 8 times a day, every day of the week. This is what the scrutiny that managers are under these days. But back then, these managers built their mystique almost through myth and legend, and there were stories told about them. Now we have direct access and we see them, and you've got the likes of me asking questions all the time. And so people either get tired, jaded, fed up, caricature managers, or they enjoy that level of engagement.
And I suppose that's what kind of is so impressive, really, because even my little sort of time in football, I actually stopped talking to the media for a little while because I think someone
Look at
wrote
you
a piece
now.
about me. Look at me now, sitting on my sofa at home, chatting to a ton of top presenters in the country. No, but it's only just because someone wrote a piece about me, and I just thought that was so far off and so like not the kind of person I was, and it was more about my habits on a night out than even about my characteristics. And I was like, "What? I don't do that. I've never done that." And so I just thought, right, the hell with him. And I'm not speaking to anyone in the press. So I didn't speak to the press pretty much for about 5 years. But as you say, I was getting 2 interviews a month. He's getting it all day long. So I think that's why it is so impressive from my point of view. And I suppose you just go on. No, go ahead. Go on.
What you say was commonplace. In the days, there were certain players that would not do interviews. There are still some, but not many. And they just wouldn't do them because they didn't get their right to speak, and they didn't get their right of reply, excuse me. So at the moment, if somebody writes about you and says you did this on a night out, you're on social media saying, no, this is the real story. And then the balance tips the other way. It's the journalist's reputation that's at stake as opposed to the footballer. So that happens a lot more. The introduction of social media and wall-to-wall television and radio, etc., has a lot of downsides in terms of privacy and in terms of that what you talked about, that family atmosphere and that collective trust in a squad, that's often broken by social media stories or any kind of story. But at least now players and managers and clubs can answer back. It's not through the filter of a newspaper. And I speak as a newspaper talks editor and editor, so there is a redress now. You'd be able to fix that straight away.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Maybe I was just kind of come out the other side where you didn't have that and probably just felt a little bit, miffed by the whole thing. But I suppose you just
Yeah.
say if anyone's joining us, because this is, obviously people will be tuning in live on Twitter, Instagram Live, Facebook, on my YouTube channel. So if anyone is joining us, I'm delighted to say that I've got Des Kelly from BT Sport here with me. And all I'm doing in this series of McVeigh Meets is really just trying to raise a few pounds for the NHS. I'm trying to raise £1,000. So if you would like to donate, just go on to any of my social media profiles and click on the link, or you could just go on the Just Giving page and type in McVeigh Meets, and I'd be delighted if you can donate to that page. So this is talking about the current situation. I don't just want to stick it to Liverpool because the fact that we had Jason McAteer on Saturday was very Liverpool. Henry Winter on Sunday happened to talk quite a lot about Liverpool, but maybe just because they're top of the league, they are so topical. What's your take on the whole title situation?
The season's got to be finished. Simple as that. There's still a couple of chapters to write in the story of this season. I don't think you could start the next season without finishing this, whenever it happens. Even if next season's truncated, this one has to finish to the end, and then you can redraw the parameters for next season. I don't think you change this halfway through. I know it's a difficult time, and I know that I've heard the phrase null and void. Dear God, it drives me mad. I just think they should be played. However it happens, the game should be played. Simple as that.
Yeah, no, and I do appreciate that, and I think that is the case. But I suppose it's all dictated by government and whether we actually are allowed to go and play again. And I'm sure how many conversations have you had about who gets tested, different equipment that you need, and why should footballers go to the front of the queue? So all those are probably all in the middle of that conversation.
Yeah, I think, but they're all solvable. I think if unless things take a turn for the worst, which it doesn't look like at the moment, I think all of those problems are solvable. I think a significant proportion of people would want sport and football in particular to return under certain conditions. Yes, I mean, you've played, Paul, I'm sure you've played in many empty grounds because that's the level you played at. but it is a soulless experience, isn't it? I mean, I remember
awful.
Yeah. So there'll be none of that charged atmosphere, none of that passion that sweeps down from the stands. But, we're at the stage where we'll take anything, I think, right now. I remember Bristol City playing Wolves, I think, in the FA Cup, but they were redeveloping the ground. And so one side of the ground and one end was just completely gone, really. It was just, there was this TV scaffold and two other stands. And Tony Pulis was managing at the time. I think that's all. I think that detail's roughly right, but the story really relates to the fact that the pitchside microphones were all still on, and all you could hear was Tony Pulis issuing his instructions. Within about 2 or 3 minutes, we had to turn all of the pitchside microphones off due to the number of apologies for the language used, because everything got said. It's an echoey, hollow experience, it's probably not befitting the Premier League because that's what we want, that great buzz and that atmosphere. But I think we just need to play the games to get going.
Yeah, and almost going to the opposite end of the spectrum from sort of empty stadia that I used to play in with one man and their dog watching the games. What about in the last couple of years, because you've been doing this for quite a while now, when you're watching a particular player, can you tell me who that player is that just for you, just excites you? You just like, I just want to see this guy playing every single week if I could.
Well, he'd probably say the same if he could. I love watching Gareth Bale. Every time I go to a Champions League game and he's involved, there's an explosion from him. Something incredible happens. He's not somebody who plays every week, not somebody I would see every week, but he's a player that genuinely excites me, and I want him to come back and fulfill all the potential that he has. I don't know. There's loads now. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
difficult. I could do a list, but it wouldn't be.
yeah.
It
And were
wouldn't be
you
difficult
there
to do
on the
even then.
on on the night Gareth Bale scored the overhead kick in the final? Were you at that game?
Not only was I there, but I was chatting with him within minutes of the final whistle in the middle
Ah,
of the pitch, where he announced that he was furious that he wasn't starting and he had to think about his future. And I thought, really, even after this? And yeah, so he gave us the interview that he was thinking of leaving Real Madrid and he had to have a showdown talk with Zidane, of course, then left, and then everything changed again. And then he came back. But as we walked down, he didn't want. He's quite a shy guy, Gareth,
yeah,
in many respects, and he didn't want to do hundreds and hundreds of interviews. So he came and joined us in the tunnel and just watched replays of the goal on our monitors, and we're just having a chat. And then I pointed out that Karius was crying, had gone into the dressing room because he missed the second goal, didn't he?
yeah.
Bale's second goal. And I said, he's gone in there in tears. And he said, all right. So off he went in and sat down with Karius in the dressing room to have a chat
No
about
way.
all things during the match. Yeah, he's one of the good guys. I like him. And he gets a bit of stick for his love for golf and that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
he's a player that does excite me all the time.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, and I suppose that shows the other side of just the ruthless nature of football, because you must see that quite a lot, because you've gone across, for over the years of covering football, writing about it, editing it, reporting on it. You must have seen the full spectrum of what the industry's like.
What you mean? Has anyone punched me? Yeah, there've been life bans, physical confrontations. Yeah, people much more prior to social media. You would settle it. Someone would come and confront you and have the chat. Um, yeah, it's a ruthless industry. Of course it is. Yeah, people are discarded and tossed away, and with all the kind words, it still ends up that way. But then so many professions are like that, including the industry we're in, newspaper
Yeah,
industry. So it's just life, isn't it? You're at the elite level, and cabinet ministers come and go. So do managers. Yeah. Managers get a better payoff.
and I think that's yeah, that's true. I think that probably is a nice little sort of introduction into the area that I'm most passionate about, most interested in. It's all around the psychology and mindset, and it was almost quite nonchalant the way you say that about, oh, we're at the elite level, this is what happens. But actually, for anyone who's tuning in, because I've got a lot of connections sort of outside of the UK and Ireland, and it's in America, Europe, Asia, Australia. So like anyone who is listening to this chat they'd probably be sitting there thinking, but how do you get to that level? Because not everybody can do that.
Uh, I, I've been in it for 35 years now. I wasn't. I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be a journalist. That path wasn't open to me. I didn't have any family relations or friends who were in that industry. It's just something that happened almost by chance. I ended up filling in. It's a terribly boring lifestyle. To
No, no,
truncate it,
tell me,
sub it
tell me,
down.
tell me,
I turned up. I
tell
turned
me.
up to fill in. Turned up at David Dimbleby's newspaper group. David Dimbleby being journalism royalty. He
Of
had a
course.
local newspaper group in southwest London, and I filled in for a friend of mine who had just started there because he'd flunked his degree. Um, I filled in for free on the holidays while he was away, and they offered me a job, which was kind, but I still had a year of my degree to go. But Dimbleby and a guy called Malcolm, who was the editor there, they kept me a post and an opening to the following year, which was a disaster for the third year of my degree, but I'd found something that I really loved doing. And they were lucky. I was lucky enough to get that support. And so from there, it went into a Fleet Street agency. And then I was looking after Chelsea Football Club's publications in the days before social media, and it was a programme, and their club newspaper, and Ken Bates genuinely was a trial by fire. It was a crucible that your character was forged in. He would pull the questions off of your clipboard or your notebook or whatever you had. He'd go through and he'd say, yeah, all right, do that one, not doing that one, not doing that one, you can stick that one. And he was a beast to deal with, and it was
Yeah.
character building.
Well, character building, but then as and again, it just this. So this is the reason why it's interesting to me, Des, because how many people would have gone through an experience like that and then just quit? So what is it? And my question is, directly related to you. What is it that why you could take all of that abuse and hard work and all of the other stuff that was involved and carry on, and not just carry on, get through it, get to the very top?
Yeah, I'm not really good at the whole self-analysis thing. I think it's good to be your worst critic. I'd say that because not so much in newspapers. In newspapers, everyone is quite happy to tell you that is absolute, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine. That's the language of the industry. TV is slightly
yeah,
different. TV people tell you things like, "No, no, that was okay. That was fine." And if you actually say, "Well, what really? I didn't." Someone will say, "Well, don't worry. If nobody's saying anything about it, that means it's fine." That is absolute nonsense. So be your own worst critic.
that's
You should
yeah,
you should know things that you have done wrong, even if you don't hear them pick up on it, or if you don't get any feedback. You should still know that and try and fix it. And luckily, I've been given a space because you do make mistakes. It's live television. It's the nature of the game. Also, you make mistakes because you're learning it, or it's a slightly different role that you were
yeah,
doing, or there's a sound problem, or there's a really truculent manager, and how do I deal with this? Is the first thing you think when you set out. So you just have to keep going and try and improve. And if you improve, fingers crossed, you'll survive. If you don't, you'll get pushed away. Even though everyone's saying, no, it's fine, it's fine. If you don't feel it's fine, it isn't.
yeah. No, and I think that kind of almost goes full circle then back, whether it's the Jurgen Klopp, maybe Pep Guardiola, any of the kind of the best, even if you look at Sir Alex Ferguson, when you have someone who they're already succeeding, so they're already at the very top of the game, and yet their mindset, their philosophy is, and yet we need to improve again. That sort of sounds like what
Yeah,
you're talking about.
a little bit, but I'm not doing their job. So all I can say is when they are at that level, say Pep Guardiola, and he then bridles when you ask him before a game to justify his team selection. He's in the back of his head. He's thinking, "What the hell do I have to tell you why I picked A instead of B?" And there's an element of resentment. It's also a distraction. So those kind of the obstacles you have to negotiate. So he might sometimes give you a one-word answer. In a post-match interview with Jose Mourinho, having lost to Liverpool, he literally said, "I have nothing to say to me. I think about 13 times." Your Twitter followers and I literally had to keep him there because I thought, well, no, you can't do this. But you don't want
Yeah,
to go into a confrontation and well, you do want a confrontation, but one that's sort of manageable. So I just kept asking him questions, very not difficult ones. So what about the first goal? What about the foul? And all he would say is, "I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say." And I said, "So what about your position?" "I have nothing to say." And then he went, "What about my position?" And then, "I have nothing to say," and nothing. And there's always something that you have to negotiate. So if you're given the chance to learn on the job a little bit, to get some positive feedback, but always remember that you are learning on the job and you want to improve all the time. And you should also remember, and what I always, the other thing I kind of resented a little bit, I'm not a coach. Okay, I'm not a UEFA badge holding coach.
mm-hmm.
I will ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
and my job is to ask questions. My job isn't to tell people how to play football, and I see a little bit of that sort of creeping in these days. But I think that when they're at the elite level, it's more difficult to challenge them. So, Alex Ferguson didn't take kindly to people telling him how to play or what to do. I remember a fantastic headline in one newspaper, and it said before the Champions League final, "How to stop Messi," and it was by a certain journalist. And I was thinking, I think Alex Ferguson's probably got a better idea than you. So I think there's a bit of trust.
Yeah,
There's a bit of
yeah.
trust. I think you do your job. I don't think it has to be confrontational all the time. If it's a two bob game on a October night that doesn't mean anything in mid-table, you don't treat it like the Third World War.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways of,
Mm-hmm.
but then you always have to remember, however inverted commas friendly or chummy you get with these guys, there will come a point where you have to ask them, well, are you going to be in a job tomorrow? Because it's the natural cycle of management. Well, most of it. Yeah.
So, and I think that's a really difficult position you're in, because would it be correct in saying that you're almost trying to build the rapport with them in the relationship, but you need to be able to hit them almost like a jab in the ribs at the same time?
I think they all know it anyway. If it gets to that point, then they'll know that question's coming. It's how they react to it is entirely up to them, but it's your job still to ask the question. So you're not going to apologise for that.
Yeah.
There's a way of doing it. I think you do it with a bit of respect. I think you can treat the season as a long race. I don't think you go in as it depends on the situation, but game by game, you don't go in as an attack dog in every game. It's just it just becomes one paced, and I think you get more out of people if you chat to them than if you just keep throwing grenades at them. But there are points in the season, there are points in people's journeys where you have to ask the tough questions. That's fine, that's the job. And people having had that kind of conversation through the year, that's a much easier place to be, because you can have the conversation and put it in context.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And again, I'll just throw it out again. Just if anyone is joining us on our Instagram live, on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube channel, I'm here with Des Kelly. Absolutely fascinating conversation, talking about his dealings with some of the best managers, best players around the world of football. And of course, I'm doing these interviews just to raise some money for the NHS. So if you do want to donate, please go on any of my social media profiles, click on my bio, and there's my link to the Just Giving page, or go on Just Giving and just type in McVeigh Meets. Des, the next question I had for you is, do you ever get intimidated?
Not now. I've been doing it for too
No.
long, really.
Did you beforehand then?
Oh, it would be natural to be intimidated when Ken Bates phones you up and I can't use the words that he even on here I can't use the words, but I remember having a row with him about it. It was a lesson in business for me, because I was working for a Fleet Street agency. He rang me up, said I'd forgotten something in one of his publications, club newspaper or a club program, and he called me a certain name. So I got in a taxi from Fleet Street, went down to Chelsea, which was being rebuilt at the time, using his porter cabin office. And Teresa was in the front desk there. She's still there. And I remember there was a family waiting to get their season ticket subscriptions. And I said, demanded that he came out. He came out, and I said, you can't call me that, whatever that name was, because I don't work for you. Jumped in a taxi, went back into the office. Some friends that you'll know, like Peter Drury, were working there, and some other guys as well.
Yeah.
And I went back, felt very pleased with myself that I'd given him my tuppence worth. Anyway, there's a silence, and of course the phone rings in the boss's office about 30 minutes after I got back, and he calls me in with a yell, Kelly! He explains the situation to me. He said, this chairman of Chelsea pays us X number of pounds per year. If he calls you a bleep, you are a bleep. And that's essentially my first lesson in football business. So you can get intimidated. It's a difficult situation because you know you're on live TV, but as it goes on, it feels less intimidating, and you realise that some of the managers will come in a certain mood anyway and be awkward. There are a couple of famous managers who are notoriously, how can I say, volatile. They could be very charming and chatty, or they could be very truculent and difficult to get an answer out of. That would be intimidating. It was intimidating in the sense that you're just aware that you're on live TV. Now it's less about that, and you just realise, well, are you really going to be that awkward? And like when Pep Guardiola first came into the Premier League, he hadn't been doing pre-match interviews with Bayern Munich, I don't think. So he found it quite difficult to do that pre-match talk about the team. Yeah. It was a sort of quizzical scratch of the head, as he does, and he'd look at you and say, "What, I have to tell you why I picked Aguero instead of." So that's a difficult thing. So you didn't learn little tricks. So he will sometimes answer a question with a yes or a no, just one word answer. And I used to take the microphone back and then ask something else to try and keep it going. It's much easier now just to leave the microphone there, and he then will carry on talking. He has a little sort of quirky way, so he can be very engaging, or it can be a little bit distracted and not want to be there. That's a different. And Jose's a different thing. He's incredibly charming if he wants to be, and then he'll be incredibly difficult if he needs to be. But he's always good TV, and I enjoy interviewing him as well.
And that's, I think, when you've just thrown in, those couple of managers, I think it'd be really interesting to get your take on what you could learn from two guys. Now, if you had said maybe 10 years ago, Mourinho was probably top of the tree. Him and Pep were as good as it gets. I think Jurgen Klopp put himself right in there now as the three that pretty much are the best. Obviously, Mourinho hasn't really sort of got the record in the last couple of years, but what he's done, can't be argued with. What kind of lessons do you think you could either share, take your insights of seeing, because if those guys are at the very, very top of their industry and you're seeing them all the time, what do you think people could learn from those three?
So, sometimes they could learn a great deal about acting. I know that, because some of the managers do just perform on camera.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Arsene Wenger would say that if I'm talking to you, I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to my board, I'm talking to the fans, and I am talking to my dressing room and my players. So you're aware that they're projecting it, or they have a narrative they want to give. You can ask Pep Guardiola a question, and he'll give you an entirely different track. Mourinho's brilliant at it. He'll talk about Brexit, and he'll have a persecution complex about something that's happened that day, but it's just good TV. What do you learn from them? I don't know. You'd have to work with them in a coaching situation. You can't learn from them in that sort of strange post-match media bubble. You can watch how they operate, and you can see how they deflect, or how they engage, or how they invent an entirely different narrative of what's just appeared. So you can learn all of those things. But I think to understand them as people, and to understand how they got to the top of their profession, it isn't judged on a press conference or a TV interview with me in the tunnel. It's judged on the performance of the players and how they work for him. Now, but I must say that the importance of the TV interview has multiplied exponentially over recent years, because that's the access point for so many fans to see how their manager reacts, to see what he's like in those pressure situations. And that's why Klopp does so well. It feeds that optimism and that confidence that's around. Equally, if you have a manager who comes in and mumbles his way through some car crash of an interview, everyone goes, "Oh God, he's not going to do it," and the confidence ebbs away. So there is an importance. I don't think you learn much about. You learn a lot about the surface of their character. You don't learn about how they genuinely work and operate.
Okay. Yeah, no, I completely get that and understand that, because I think it's only whenever I stepped away from football that I actually realised that I have this performer gene, because beforehand I would never have recognised it, would never have thought about it, because I would have just said, and it's back to that identity. I have an identity that I'm a professional footballer, and that's it. I wouldn't have said I was a performer. I would have said I'm a professional footballer. And it's only, now that I'm doing my keynote speaking and, studying this whole world of psychology and mindset and understanding these different faces and fronts and facades that we put on in the variety of situations we go into, because how we act with our friends and family is different to how we act with our colleagues, how we act with strangers and people we're trying to impress, etc. So I suppose it is interesting looking back at the football world, how we have this different way of trying to show almost our best side and putting our best foot forward.
Yeah, or some are quite happy to put their worst foot forward and into your groin if it goes wrong. I think it has changed. I think it has changed a great deal, in that there was a lot more face-to-face confrontation in press situations, because it wasn't on camera, because it wasn't being recorded by anybody. Now it's a little bit of it, but it isn't at the level it used to be. I mean, there were physical threats and all sorts of stuff. You don't see that so much now on TV. People probably would like to, but I'm relieved it doesn't quite get to that level. But you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
I know. Last question for you, Des, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I really appreciate you coming on.
I've got hours, mate. I've got hours.
Yeah, I think everybody has food and stuff to eat. So no, it was more, and I know you mentioned Gareth Bale, and obviously incredible player. Who in the Premier League, which player or players really impress you? And I don't just mean because of their playing ability. It could be how they are with you, what they're doing as a role model. But I think just because you have, much more interaction with these guys, and I have no idea what someone like Raheem Sterling's like. I see him on a football pitch, but I have no idea what he's like off the pitch. So who really impresses you for whatever reason?
See, Raheem's a good example. He's changed perceptions about himself that were through going back to your earlier point about you not talking to the press for years because of a certain article that you didn't like. I think Raheem could have been in that situation and probably was when he was at Liverpool. But as it's gone on, you see a lot more of his character, and he earns a lot of respect and admiration now because you could see what his character is. He's a lot more gentle than people think. He thinks about important issues in ways that other footballers have followed him. So again, he's changed perceptions. In terms of people that I deal with, quite a lot. I mean, you wrote that book. I'll give you a plug here. The Stupid Footballer is Dead. So footballers now are bright. I mean, they're bright. They understand well.
Yeah.
I'm making a sweeping generalisation, which is what we do. But there is a fair proportion of footballers who perfectly understand how they can project their image, perfectly understand how they can talk to the fans, and enhance their own worth. So someone like Jordan Henderson I admire because he got a lot of stick even when Liverpool were doing okay and on the way up. And now he's in a situation where he can literally puff his chest out and go, I told you so. But he's always the guy you can go to when there's a defeat. And that's when it's a test of character. The players like Milner, Henderson, Andy Robertson, they'll step up if they have to. Virgil van Dijk, they'll step up if the times are bad. They haven't had many, to be fair, so I haven't tested it too much. Equally, you'd see that. I can't. Another rule of what I do and another rule of journalism is don't tell everything you know. So I'll do this as a around the corner story. A big club lost a game. A big club lost a game, and it was a vital game. And you turn around and think, right, the captain's going to come in here and explain this, or at least account for it, and give some representation for the team. All the big figures disappeared, all of them. And I looked at a lad who was 18, 19, having to do all the post-match interviews. I mean, a lot of them as well. And I thought, that's not right. That's not a club that's right. So in those situations, you find out the character of the team and you find out the backbone of the biggest characters.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting, Des. And listen, I think I just need to say to you again, just thank you so much for coming on today. I know you were joking earlier that people are either thinking high rating up and thinking you're looking better or looking worse, and I don't know which it is. I'll let the viewers decide that one. But from my point of view,
I can guess
well.
that. Thank you,
No.
Harry will have better stories because he's at the stage of his career now. He doesn't care. He'll just say anything that
Yeah,
comes to
I
him.
know. I
He's always
know.
been like that. The only other thing
Yeah,
I
it's
would
true.
say
And
is if you,
go on.
sorry, one other thing I would say to football fans: if you get a chance, just do it. I've said this before. Go and see Lionel Messi play live because he is.
I wish. I
He
wish.
is. Just see him in the flesh and watch him only because he is the Sistine Chapel of football. He is one of the great wonders of the modern world. He's certainly one of the great wonders of sport. And if my only message would be, go and see him play live because it is astonishing, particularly when he's on form, obviously.
Yeah, you would not believe what I've just been doing this morning. So during this whole lockdown, I said about I'm trying to do some training. So ridiculously, I'm going for a six pack. So I'm 42 and I'm trying to get a six pack, which is obviously a ridiculous thing to try and achieve. But I was training this morning. This is like my 28th session in my 5th week. So I'm training hard, really, really hard. And today I was training in my Barcelona Lionel Messi shirt. And this is crazy, and the last little story before I let you go, about 2 years ago, I went into my attic in my house and thought, I have 5 black bags of football shirts. And because I've got all these black bags, clearly I don't really value these football shirts. So I was just going to throw them in the bin. And instead of throwing them in the bin, I thought, well, maybe someone suggested why don't you give them away on social media. So I give away every shirt I've ever owned, whether it's my Spurs debut shirt, whether it's scoring against Man United in the Premier League, playing for Northern Ireland away in Spain, or all of these shirts had 5 black bags, and clearly I don't value them. And the only one shirt I've ever bought in my entire life is a Barcelona shirt with Messi on the back. And it's so funny that you've just said that, because he is just as good as it possibly gets, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a few. Oh, yes, definitely. I've got a few shirts and bits of memorabilia. One of them, my wife threw in the bin because somebody had drawn on it. They hadn't. They'd signed their name on it. It's a Champions League final winning shirt. Anyway, I'm getting a 6-pack as well. Not the same one as you, Paul, but I'm going to sit back probably now about 2 or 3 hours. See you soon.
Well, Des, listen. I really, really appreciate it. And if anyone has enjoyed Des's stories and all his insights, and speaking with the biggest and best names in world football, if you'd like to donate, please just go on the Just Giving page, type in McVeigh Meets, and donate whatever you can. And just as I let Des go, I should just say that I'm actually going to double down today, because I've got another McVeigh Meets. I'm delighted that the broadcaster and fellow countryman Colin Murray will be joining me this evening at 5 p.m. GMT. So that's right, another McVeigh Meets, and there will be possibly subtitles will be available for that one.
You won't get a word in.
I know what he's like. And the thing is, because I've been on Fight and Talk with him before, and he absolutely slaughtered me, so I'm going to have to bring it up, but I'm sure he'll do it anyway. Des, listen, really, really appreciate you. Thanks very much. Stay safe. Thanks everyone for joining us, and see you around 5 o'clock later on today if you can. Take care.
All the best. I'll tune in. Bye.